What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. And today we'll be talking about demons, Stranger Things, Stranger Things season 4, obviously, Hellfire, witches, both Wanda and Sabrina, warlocks. The guitar features in Stranger Things, as well as the dude witches, and the 2,000-year process of demonizing actually good stuff in Western Christian good versus evil ideology. So, anyways, I'm gonna try to not do too much spoilering. If you have not seen Stranger Things season 4, it's we're gonna talk around it. I'm trying not to spoil it myself. I haven't actually completed the entire thing, so I do like a lot of things about the show. Obviously, it's a very popular show, obviously, but it is also contains a lot of I've done an entire video where I talk about what I don't like, so I'm going to try to not talk about that stuff this time, mostly focusing on the process of demonization and what the Hellfire Club, what the witch hunt, right? The McCarthy era movie, what was it, The Crucible, The Scarlet Letter, which was actually both a metaphor for the McCarthyist blacklisting in Hollywood and the anti-communist witch hunting, right? Speaking of, taking actually good stuff like a communism's and then demonizing it and then going on a witch hunt. And it was, I believe, it was Arthur Miller who made that movie in that brief window of time, right around the same time when another pretty based movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, came out, right? Anti-war. And then, but that movie, these stories of the witch hunts of Salem witch trials, just as one of that era of grave fear and hysteria, right? And then attacking demonically possessed people and ideas and symbols and ideologies, right? This is an ongoing. I want to argue in this video that what Eddie is representing, whether the Duffer Brothers and Netflix wanted to communicate this or not, what Eddie represents. Eddie is this character here. Just for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Eddie is. I've talked about Eddie previously, but Eddie is one of the main characters in season 4 of Stranger Things. Eddie Munson is portrayed by Joseph Quinn, is a Hellfire Club leader. With a Hellfire Club, that's the shirt that he's wearing, right? Eddie is the official D&D club leader, so that's what it is, where they play Dungeons and Dragons. He's an electric guitar player, not unlike myself. I didn't play a lot of D&D specifically in high school, but I played a lot of Diablo. It was CRPG D&D, basically. Played a lot of JRPGs, CRPGs, Diablo. A lot of video games have deep crossovers with tabletop games and board games, which were all also, of course, during the Satanic Panic era, undergoing a process of demonization and attack. My partner Holly is raised in deep conservative Christian, very eldritch conservative Christian, very Salemish, very cultish, North American conservative Christian culture, and that's what the book Woman is about by Holly. But the Eddie character is somebody who is trying to. Oh no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't look at people's thing. I'm gonna spoil it myself. But the point is that Eddie is somebody who is representing the people in this time in the United States, because a lot of Stranger Things is basically just Americana. It's American 1980s and 90s movie and real world nostalgia. That weirdly the Duffers are actually younger than me, so they were still they were unfertilized eggs that that their parents would be forced to have now, because we're in the process of demonizing and women, and that part of that is controlling women's bodies. But anyways, the Duffer Brothers were not even a twinkle in mommy and daddy's eye when a lot of this, the pop cultural references, the the alien, xenomorph aliens, the D&D, the Steven Spielberg movies and the E.T., and the Goonies, they were like not even alive during a lot of this, right? So it's kind of weird. But anyways, that's just an aside. So Eddie's character is a head of the Hellfire Club, who is being persecuted by people who are in the high school. There's that famous scene. I don't know. He's reading a article, right, about how Dungeons and Dragons is destroying our youth. Demons are coming to get our children, right? There's going to be Satan is entering our children's minds. Kids think they're just playing a game, but what they're actually doing is they are doing the bidding of the Dark One. When they are attacking their elves and reading these stories about entering these caves and fighting orcs and goblins, they think they're just playing a game, but they're actually bringing to life hell on earth. Like they're being possessed, they're being demonically possessed, they're being influenced, right? They're reading things, they're using Ouija boards, they're using all of this occult evil stuff, right? That has been like, again, and so kind of coming back to this, sorry, I lost my train of thought when I was like trying to find Eddie's picture. I should probably not try to do that right now. What's that? I'm gonna get spoiled. Okay. I keep looking for that. I'm gonna get spoiled. Yeah, it's true. Okay. It looks like all of the season 1 stuff is all gone. I thought it would be a snap to find it. What's that? Oh, you sent it to you on Discord? Okay. I'm gonna try to play this clip because it's actually very important. It'll get my brain back on track. Yeah, no, it's yeah. So I'm gonna just give me 1 second while I get this video going. See, that's why we have Holly here. Without Holly, I would be unable to find anything that I need to find when I need to find it. So special thanks to Holly. Okay, here we go. Let's just play this. This is gonna help a lot. Here we go. Wait.
The devil has come to America. Dungeons and Dragons. At first regarded as a harmless game of make-believe, now has both parents and psychologists concerned. Studies have linked violent behavior to the game, saying it promotes satanic worship, ritual sacrifice, sodomy, suicide, and even murder.
Target, exactly. We're the freaks because we like to play a fantasy game.
Parties are a game where you toss balls into laundry baskets.
That's the real monster.
So, it's the championship game?
Anyways, okay, that's not the whole thing, but you get the point. So he's like reading this article about Dungeons and Dragons, right? Destroying corrupting the minds of the youth, in making children want to commit murders, right? Making kids, it's just destroying their mental health, and also there's this satanic supernatural dimension, right? To it, and then throughout the rest of the show, later on in the show, there is an actual the basketball team. When things start happening, when things start going bad, right? The basketball club, right? That he's kind of talking about the jocks in high school, right? He's like, if you're not in bands, or if you're not into science or parties, or you're in the game, you play the game where you throw balls into laundry baskets, right? Basketball. The basketball team actually later on, right, goes on a witch hunt for Eddie. So the basketball, these all the varsity jacket crew, right? Play by that guy. The lead guys play by that guy. That guy later on goes on his own speech. He stands up in front of a church. This guy, Jason, he's the prom king. He marries he's like the star. His daddy is the richest, whitest guy in town, right? He is the head of the basketball team, and he gives in the beginning of the show, he gives like a speech, like everything's kind of going bad, right? Because in the previous seasons of Stranger Things, people have been disappearing, right? People have been dying, right? The Mind Flayer, you will have the Demogorgons, right? All these weird things keep happening in Hawkins, and not so good things. People disappear, die, lose their minds, disappear multiple times, like Will, and the head of the team, right? The head of the team, Jason, gives this speech where he's in front of all of the school in the basketball court, and he says, we've been through a lot of trials and tribulations. We've had a lot of hard times here in Hawkins. And remembering people who had recently died. So I'm not going to tell you who died, just so you can go back and watch it. And so he's giving this speech to everyone, and he's like, and that's why we're going to win this basketball game. We're going to win the basketball game for Hawkins, right? It's like, just we just gotta, just show up to your sports ball game, right? It's real self-serving because he's the head of the basketball team, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like Black Lives Matter, and now vote for Biden because I'm just here to, Biden's like, I'm gonna win this election, or Kamala, right? I'm gonna win this election for all of us hurting Black Lives Matter Black people in America. Just help me win this election. Just everybody get up and vote. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I mean that's kind of the tone is like, let's take all of our suffering and our grief and just kind of he says something like that. I take all of our suffering upon myself, and I'm going to win this basketball game with my team of, it's all like my sports team, right? Like my U.S. police, like my U.S. military, like my U.S. government, right? I'm going to take this all upon myself, and I'm going to heal us by vanquishing the foe and just doing great at my sports game. We're gonna heal by conquering the evil that is Iraq, as another example. We're gonna heal by going on a crusade hundreds of years ago, right? Yes, we've suffered a lot. We're having a lot of famine, poverty, right? People are suffering and dying in Europe and then in their settler colonies in Salem. And what we're going to do about that is we're going to just take all of that, and we're just going to not think about it too much. And we're going to get behind the tallest, blondest, blue-eyedest, wealthiest guy and listen to what he says. And we're just going to throw all of our aspirations onto him. It's a very important speech, I would argue, in that sense, as a counter to what Eddie's saying, right? Eddie is like, this whole high school, right? By extension, this whole America, actually, I don't think the Duffers really intended this, but they're just looking at what happened, and Satanic Panic happened. Everybody's listening to Alice Cooper, right? But when Eddie, when he's looking at that high school, he's looking at America, and he's going like, you have people who are, just either crypto tech bro, science nerds that are often like not really doing science, especially nowadays, like I always talk about. And then you have the popular kids that are going to the parties, gaining social capital and clout, right? Those are like the celebrities. Those are like people that are the fake it till you make it entrepreneurial capitalists, that are going to schmooze and brown nose and just talk a lot and not do a lot and take advantage of other people's labor as capitalist bosses when they grow up, right? The popular kids, and climb that, they're going to rat race their ladder, right? Over consuming iPhones and Dulce until they burn the earth with climate change and catastrophic, military industrial imperialism. And he looks at all of I'm reading all this extra into it, but he's looking at it, he's like, you have the popular kids, you've got band, you've got these little clubs, you've got these little compartments that American society has broken everyone into, especially by the 80s. It was very hard cut. This is your group. You can be part of the music geeks, you can be in the theater club, you can be in the popular kids, you can be in the hottest clique, or you can be the sports team, you can be the jock, right? That's like Breakfast Club. That's all those 80s movies. They're just commenting on what's happening in America, a lot of it. And then, or if you're not in any of those, well, then you're Satan. You're demonic, right? Who doesn't fit in those clubs, right? Gay people, queer people, just weird poor people, right? Think of The Craft, right? That's another demonic movie about witches and demons and hell and fire and demonization. Poor people, gay people, queer people, trans people, indigenous people, who often are, they're already identified as not normal and queer because they have long hair when they're dudes, like I've gone off about many times, right? Non-white people, obviously. And then there's a lot of missing. That's a lot of missing with Stranger Things because it's written by 2 white guys, so they can't. It's hard for anyone to deal with. But those are, I have an entire panels about the all goth POC, right? Alternative and goth identifying people of color, which actually is disproportionately people. A lot, it's complicated, but a lot of goth imagery and alternative imagery, the imagery that goes into things that the Hellfire Club is into, the black, the angst, all that kind of stuff comes from non-white peoples, and then they kind of gets erased. And we talk about that if you want to learn more about that, you can go and watch the alt goth panels that I've put on, right? Being alt goth and POC.
The butt of the joke.
Okay,
if you do not.
Yeah. So this is just one of them. I did like 2 of them, and I think there's going to be a third one coming up very soon. So that should be fun. We'll talk about Stranger Things. So, but anyways, so demonization of those peoples is part of. It's not really a new process. This is an ancient, very long. It is a very long-standing and torturous for a lot of people who suffer it, but it has been a long-term process. That is part and parcel of. Unfortunately, it's deeply ingrained, right, in Western culture. Certainly in not just Anglo-Saxon, right? The Spanish had their Inquisition. The Salem had their witch trials. Britain, the persecution, right? The Constitution of the United States, right, has it at the first amendment, freedom of religion, and as well the one of the first 5 amendments is no soldiers and military of the government will be quartered inside of will be quartered in peacetime in citizens' households, right? And the reason why, right? Constitutional. Let me see if I can find constitutional. All right, no soldier peacetime. If I get the exact name of it, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. So you're like, why am I talking about this for? This is before the 4th Amendment. This is right after the 2nd Amendment, the right to bear arms, which is that's a special one. But the reason why this one, right, is because this was what was at the top of the minds of the colonizer, the American, the first Americans in the colonies, right? Because, and the reason why is because of the history of religious persecution, right? And by extension, demonization, right? Otherization that was going on in Europe, right? Right as Columbus was sailing across the sea, right as Columbus was in 1492 sailing the ocean blue to discover America. Again, you know what I think about that. But in that time in Europe, right, there was massive, of course, persecution and fighting and demonization based on religious. So Catholics, of course, killing, trying to eradicate, trying to wipe out, and trying to destroy Protestants. Protestants attacking Catholics. Now the Protestants were a smaller group in this time because the Catholic Church was still the descendant. The Catholic Church is really a holdover of the Roman Empire, right? So when I talk a lot about America is Star-Spangled Rome, and you have like the unhealed, the current G7, right? Anglo-Saxons and the NATO countries, to a large extent, are unhealed descendants of Roman trauma, meaning they haven't really gotten better from this view of the world as us and them being anything that doesn't really benefit the power structure in a lot of ways. Gayness, queerness, women generally speaking, non-white people, black people, African people, Asians, the Asiatic, the Muslim hordes, right? That's and so in the time of the 1800s and the 1700s, dragoons, right? The word dragoon is actually in StarCraft. I talked about that before, but dragoons were originally used, right? And by Louis XIV, they were used to let me see if I can try let's see, Louis the 14th. He was one of the Dragonades. I'm sorry, the Dragonades comes from dragoon, but the Dragonade were a French government policy instituted by King Louis XIV in 1681 to intimidate the Huguenot or Protestant, right, families. So the Protestants at that time, they were a small sect of people who were upset with a lot of what the mainstream Catholic Church was doing. Not to say that now there's a lot of Protestants that are replicating, right, the trauma and the demonization and the suffering and the broken ways of their Catholic predecessors. But in this time, in 1681, right, the Dragonades were used in the process of billeting ill-disciplined dragoons in Protestant households with that's what it is. Yeah. So the Dragonades is about taking ill-disciplined soldiers, right, military, in taking them and putting them into Protestant houses with implied permission to abuse the inhabitants and destroy or steal their possessions. Soldiers employed in this role were satirized as missionary dragoons, but the reality is the missions began. The concept of mission, missionaries, right, in the colonial process, right, of eradicating indigenous people for global colonial plunder for Europe and horrible atrocities that you probably know about if you watch this stream, began as internal prosecution of difference within Europe. Religious difference specifically was one of the major vectors of these this persecution. With the Edict of Nantes in 1598, Henry IV had ended France's war of religion by granting a relatively high degree of toleration to the Huguenots, as well as political and military privileges, but they were later abolished in the Peace of Alais following the Huguenot rebellions. But provisions of the edict granting religious tolerance were largely maintained under the governments of cardinals. Anyway, so I mean, my point here is that so this is a picture of the dragoons, the ill-disciplined dragoons inside of the household, right? Threatening and trying. The purpose of this was to eradicate Protestantism. If you practiced prayer, right? If you practice Protestant religions, if you said the wrong prayer, like they're forcing prayer into schools now with the Supreme Court verdicts this week. That process, the Dragonades were to, exterminate basically, or not necessarily physically kill everyone, but it was to eradicate any Protestantism, right? Because if the soldier killed you by accident, ill-disciplined soldier, I mean you'd be terrified for your life at all time. So and there were people that were killed routinely, and burning at stake is a thing. The heretic is the word heretic, right? Is a word that basically means those people who are, it's those people who are violating our religion, those people who are not coming. It's like you are part of the satanic, right? There's a scene in the Vivitch, right, where in the very beginning of that movie, the Vivitch, where the main character is saying he's a British settler in a colony in the 1600s in what is the New World, and he tells to this room of other pilgrims, right, other settlers from Britain, and he says, you all are not right with God, you are fallen, I have the correct understanding of the Bible and you are damned. He basically says that, and he says you are not following God's ways. And then say that, well, if you say that, we have no choice but to you are thus banished, right? And they're speaking in that lingo, but Yeah, that's an incredibly foolish decision because I mean, what is he going to do? But anyway, he decides, oh, I'm going to go off and build my own promised land on, you know, in New England. New England. I'm gonna make England again, but better, right? And so he, you know, but and so like that, and so they banish him. He kind of like chooses to do that. But the point is that like differences on the basis of religion, right, were very much central to Europe in that time. But they have, you know, they've been that way for a long time. It's basically forever. You go back to the Greeks and the Romans, and you know, which God is greater? My God is greater than your God. This kind of persecution by fighting people based on their lack of holiness, goodness, having the wrong God, and then forcing your God into their mind and into their cultural and spiritual and religious practices has been around for millennia, right? And so let me come back to this. So this sort of demonization process of the Protestants in the 1500s, 1600s, and then the later Protestants coming to the New World, and then what do? They demonize indigenous people, right? They're heathen savages, and they have to be cleansed from the land, right? Demonize gay people, demonize queer people. We have to burn them at the stake, right? That's where the F slur comes from, is because of the death by incineration, right? To eradicate non-straight, non-cis people, especially queer indigenous people, from the world, right? And to tell everyone else, you better not have sex with other people of the same gender. You better part your hair exactly this right way, right? You better, I mean, as Eddie says, right? You better conform, you know. You better conform to the club that you're in. Like, choose one of the clubs. You can be a football player. You can be a basketball player. You can be a popular kid. You can be a businessman, or you can be a housewife, or you can be a go-getter Clinton, boss babe. But that's it. And if you don't conform to one of the boxes, well, then you are what? Well, then you're a demon. Then you're satanic. And so the Newsweek articles, right? The article that he's reading is really just another in a long list of demonizing propaganda, demonizing words written into print, whether it's the Bible or it was into print. It was simply the heritage of the Western world, right? And because this is not something that is. It is not something of indigenous people. It is not really something of the East, right? With some exceptions, but it's been mainly when people start to become, when violence escalates to a point where it gets to a point where entire nations are attacking each other. This is where that starts to happen. You know, racism, right? Transphobia, queerphobia, and war. Right, and especially the racism part, because the racism is like peoples of entire other continents, right? Like U.S. and China, right? Like Europe and Africa, right? Europe and Asia. The concept of Europe is not really a continent. The concept of Europe is a in-group, out-group demonization process, right? But the Europe is the angels, right? The white, blonde, blue-haired, blue-eyed, right? Tall, thin, very specific, like Nordic, Anglo, Teutonic, Aryan body types peoples with their Christianity. And then everyone outside of that, right? That's what you're seeing right now in Europe is the culmination of thousands of years of, not getting better from that process, right? And so like the demons in the show, but no, there's a whole nother level of this where you have actual underside, right? Infernal, hellish creatures like the Demogorgon, right? Like Vecna, the Mind Flayer's general / sorcerer, right? That's a creepy guy that is kind of looks like a Hellraiser, but Hellraiser crossed with Diablo, crossed with Freddy Krueger. and he, like Freddy Krueger, comes into people's minds, right? So there's all these actual, in the world of the show, all these kind of underworld-like creatures coming out that they have to deal with and fight, right? The main kids have to fight and deal with. And so that sort of, that's another layer on top of this. But there's a real world aspect to it. There's a real world aspect to dealing with the Satanic Panic, right? Which you don't know what that is. Satanic Panic is most people associate the Satanic Panic with ritual abuse. Collective fears that consumed the U.S. in the 80s and the 90s are still alive and well all the way through QAnon and beyond. The most common misunderstanding about Satanic Panic is that it ever ended. The reality is it hasn't ended. One of the most famous prolonged mass media scares in history, Satanic Panic was characterized by its peak by fearful media depictions of godless teenagers and deviant music and media they consumed. This in turn led to a number of high-profile criminal cases that were heavily influenced by all social hysteria. Most people associate the Satanic Panic with so-called satanic ritual abuse, a rash of false allegations made by daycare centers in the 80s, and with the case of West Memphis 3 in the 90s, in which 3 teenagers whose wrongful conviction on homicide charges was based on little more than suspicion over their goth lifestyles. So, it had a real world component where people were, being prosecuted and charged and sentenced and being punished, and then other things, and people were going on witch hunts, like literal witch hunts, like what happens in the show, like hunting down people that they deemed were demonic, making deals with the devil, saying 666. Listen to Iron Maiden song backwards. Listen to the Dio song. You can hear the messages of the Dark One and Lucifer corrupting the minds, right? That's the songs of a lot of the metal songs, right? Like Iron Maiden's 666. Dio is like the OG metal. Woe to you, earth and sea, for the devil sends the beast with wrath, because he knows the time is short for him who hath understanding. Reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number, 666. So, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of like, well, if you're going to treat me like, just because I have a different hairstyle, or I'm gay, or I'm black and brown, or I'm not, fitting in properly, you're going to treat me like I'm an outside demon. Then a lot of metal music is like we talked about in Alt Goth panel, embracing your otherness, it is about taking your demonization and then kind of turning it against the demonizing Western Christian culture, I would argue, right? And going, oh, you're gonna call me goth? Well, I'm gonna be like Iron Maiden. I'm gonna be a giant demonic beast, and I'm gonna like have flame-throwing tyrannosaur demon creatures behind me, and I'm gonna have huge concerts, and I'm gonna take all of your children, and we're gonna all go to hell together. We're all gonna go to hell, and we're gonna have 666. We're all gonna have, our minds are gonna be possessed by Vecna and Freddy Krueger and Satan himself, and we're all gonna be manipulated, and we're all going to have torches blazed and sacred chants, and we're gonna cry and our hands held to the sky, and the night fires are gonna burn, and the rituals will begin, and we're gonna do lots of rituals, and there's gonna be sacrifices, and I'm gonna bite the head off of my bat, and I'm gonna So it was, but because the thing that the alternative and the metal and the goth music was coming from was a real, persecution, which also went along with anti-communistic witch hunts. It always has. I mean, indigenous, indigeneity, non-whiteness, collectivity, non-capitalist practices, communality. This is like all part and parcel. Right? So that's why I said, right, the demonization process is about taking actually good stuff, like just letting people love whoever they want, like letting people express their gender however they want, like we had in Hawaii, right? We had gender fluidity, and makua. There's no even words that mean gendered mother and father. The word for stand up like a man is stand up like a human, because there is no patriarchal. You have to be a man to have strength, and women are fallen weak Eves, right? I'm going to come to that one. The process of demonization is taking gender equality, LGBTQ plus rights, ecological understandings of the world as well, right? Pagans were the people who were like close to the earth and were ecologically coexisting with their false idols, right? There's only one true God. The concept of there being one true God, I would argue, is deeply wrapped up in Western reality. That is what wrapped up in a lot of the interpretation, a lot of the traumas that happened early, like about 2,000 years ago, when the imperial monocultural broken ways were really getting off, and then nobody has gotten better from that. They just keep hurting each other, right? Demonizing each other. And so there being one God means your God cannot exist. And all of our people, you must cleanse this earth of the infidel. You have to cleanse this earth of those fallen Muslim hordes, these godless heathens, these pagan false idol worshippers, right? The concept of there being, I went on a whole stream about the history, Age of Empires, and the history of civilization and civilizational, or at least civilization / empire signal to noise ratio. And so religion is very important for holding together and getting mass numbers of people riled up and prepared to convert and to crush and to build empire. I would argue you can't really have empire without some kind of religion or religious, even the religion of Western democratic Christian, Western, even if you leave out the Christian, right? Western democratic, liberal capitalism. That's another religion that has to be enforced, right? Especially in the South China Sea with aircraft carriers, and brought into Africa and Iraq, and all the bad countries have to be brought. And the people who sign up for the military, people of the populations who eat the propaganda and either are support or are oblivious to or don't care about the people that their countries, the US, Britain, France, right? Austria, Japan, India, when they go along with this kind of crap, right? You need religious fervor and a monoculture, right? There is one order. There is the Western liberal rules-based order, and you have to act and think like us. And if you don't, well, we're going to cleanse you from this earth because you are satanic. You're demon, But this is and you go, well, that's how everyone is. No, that's not how everyone is. The point of win-win cooperation and mutual aid and mutual coexistence is that it is not mono-religious. It is not monocultural. There literally are different gods, right? Like you can have your gods in this region of Anishinaabe territory, and then over here in the in the north, in Turtle Island, here in the Lakota area, you have different beliefs. And then for thousands of years, right, you have different spirits. Sky Woman for the Potawatomi is an important one. I'm reading Braden Sweetgrass. But then you have other, even the name of the continent, Turtle Island, Abiyala, Hanuna, they have different names. And then you can call it whatever you want, right? You can have your other beliefs about, Papa and Wakea. And then over there, you have your beliefs about Pachamama. Over here, you have different, all these different regions of the Americas had a whole variety of different cultural and spiritual practices, religions, deities, right? Which were also very much entwined with the earth, right? And a lot of people understood that the religion and the economy and the culture and ecological preservation were all intertwined. And so people go, you can call Pachamama or Papa or whatever you want. You can call the earth whatever you want. It's not like, you see, there was no there is no, if somebody said, well, earth is Turtle Island, and someone else says, well, earth is Pachamama, right? Indigenous people didn't go on crusades and slaughter everyone. Like the Blackfoot didn't say, you call the Earth Mother, this name. Well, we call it this name. We're gonna kill you all and make sure that you worship the right Earth Mother. That didn't happen. Do you see the difference? You see the difference? And so as long as you allow, as we say, by base countries today, as it was 2 and 5 and 10,000 years ago. That's what the Silk Road was, right? You can practice Muslim practices in Xinjiang, or if you're a Uyghur for thousands of years, you can practice your, Hubei language and also your Hubei cultures, and you You can pray to your Buddha or which one you want to in that region, and you can have your ancestral practices and your cultures. And then we're different over here in this other province. We don't always necessarily get along perfectly the whole time, but like by and large, we allow the differences to exist. Not take one and go, everyone has to be a Christian. Everyone has to be worshiping, our God. And if you don't worship our God, we're going to come to your house. We're going to burn. We're going to raise your town. We're going to kill all your people. We're going to, if you don't convert to our religion, you will be exterminated. We'll take your children from you, and then we will put them in schools where they will be Christianized. Right? Did you see the difference? That's the non-Western culture. Or it's not necessarily everyone is not necessarily that everyone outside of Western Europe is not doing that anywhere. Japan has done that to indigenous people of Okinawa, obviously. But like that's why the colonial era is the expression of that at its highest degree. It is ending now. Suppose we're entering the post-colonial era, not out of it, but we're pushing in the direction of allowing differences to exist without demonizing them, allowing other religions and languages to coexist without turning them all into some kind of evil and fallen and bad thing, right? The thing about the good and evil, right? That's the thing about the good and evil. I mean, things being good and things being bad, like Nazis are bad. That's a bad thing to do. Just kill people based on arbitrary characteristics, right? Obviously. If you, I don't know, steal your brother's toy when you're a kid and then you lie, you tell them that it just, disappeared. That's not a nice thing to do, right? But the concept of like this, the good and evil, and this is good, and by good we mean these people, this way, this language, this appearance, this white skin, this thin nose, this straight hair, not the bushy curly hair, not that textured hair. That's bad, arbitrary characteristics. I mean, it's why the West is Nazism. Nazism is just Westernism, I would argue, but like more mask off, right? But when you take your hair, when you are a boy or a man and your hair is long, that's barbaric, uncivilized, right? That's right. That's what is actually wrong about that, right? What is actually wrong about, right? That's why a lot of indigenous people were starved to death because they were men and their hair was long. What actually is bad about? There's nothing bad about that, right? That's just part of Western culture, which is taking things and usually this comes along with things like capitalism, feudalism, colonialism, imperialism. And then people in power selfishly using good and evil for their benefit. Well, if we demonize all the indigenous culture, then we'll be able to take all their land and use it to do primitive accumulation and take millions of slaves and then make a ton of money in this new world. Right? So that's another component of which is the demonization is the good and evil it's not just arbitrarily out there like this is good and that's evil, right? It's the good things are manipulated and things that benefit whoever is currently in power. It really depends, right? For white people, it's whiteness is good. And the non-whiteness is, well, black people are you're all just fucking black on black crime, right? You're all throwing spears at each other if you're British, right? That's why we deserved all of Africa and Asia, right? So it's whoever is in power decides what's the good and what's the evil, right? Like there are like good and there are like actually things that are very harmful and unnecessarily harmful in the world, but that doesn't. But the truth of what is and is not is corrupt. That is corrupted and is just lied about for actual evil purposes, right? So that's what they talk about hiding in the light. It's about, I'm a good person because I go to church every day. You beat your wife and then you also persecute your gay son and you disowned him and then you actually literally killed some people based on their religion and their skin color. And they said, well, it's okay because I go to church a lot and I give alms and I do I did 3 Hail Marys, 2 Our Fathers. So that cleanses everything, right? It's kind of like, as long as you cut, now a lot of the Protestants were like, why do we have to, there's huge money and power accumulated in this holy Roman Catholic Church descendants, the Borgias, the Catholic the papacy, of course, horribly corrupt. All of the bribery. That's why Luther put his 90-something grievances on the wall of a church as the first Protestant. He's like, I don't like this system. And then they say, well, you can cleanse. My son, let me cleanse you of your sins. Just come into the Father's booth in a Catholic church, right? Get your rosary out, right? Profess more fealty to my specific God, and we will forgive your wayward son. We'll bring you back, prodigal son. All you have to do is profess more faith to me and donate maybe like $2,000, and then we'll cleanse you of that, right? So it's like and then there was persecution inside of Europe. That's why there are people protesting against it, and then they came to America, and then they replicated their trauma, and that's why I call it the cycle of not healing from the trauma, right? And part of healing is, you might have to fight some of the systems and have like revolutionary change and then undo it. Not to say like getting a bunch of guns is going to solve anything in particular, but there has to be an end to the violence somehow. But that doesn't mean that the people are done. People have to be educated. People have to like concretely, do reparations and equity, and then return over time, right? Return over time to mutual coexistence, as opposed to I'm good and you're bad. I'm good and everything that doesn't do what I do is bad, right? You have sex with people that are the same gender, you're bad. You're going to hell. So, so there's, in America, the United States is the worst, most destructive country in the world, as the biggest capitalist superpower. I would argue because of the level of damage. It is, number one, it's the largest unhealed descendant country. 250 million, it's 330 million people. And the entire thing is the vast majority is people who identify as descendants of genocide doers, right? If you're American and you're white, and even if you just identify as American, you're identifying as, it's like Canada Day was just the other day, and it's like, why are we celebrating the flag that is a symbol of the genocide of the Indigenous people of Canada, or inside of Canada? Why are we celebrating this Canadian flag? The reality is that's the American flag. That's what it actually represents, right? And then they spend a lot of time trying to propagandize and convince everyone, no, you're good. You are the good people. You American are the good people. When you sign up for the U.S. military and you go to 800 military bases in every country in the earth, you are the good person cleansing the world of evil, which is what? Western, non-Western, rules-based order, non-liberal, democratic capitalism, which isn't really democratic at all. And and it's basically whenever the ruling class of America decides you are not doing exactly what the plutocracy wants, right? Like, for example, a South American country like, I don't know, Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, you start doing anything we don't like that for plundering this earth, and you join the demon club, right? And then the U.S. military and coups and sanctions, right? Vietnam, right? You join the demon club, be one of the good Asians. The trick is that Asians, you will never be accepted as human in the West. You'll always be yellow peril demons. But the good Asians for now are the Japanese, because they do the bidding of the West the most. They help America. That's really one of the major crimes, but one of the major crimes of Japan as one of the non-Europe based colonial powers is they continue to subjugate the peoples in what's called the Ryukyuan Islands, or the Luchu peoples, the what's called Okinawa. That whole region is where 70% of all of the military bases are on less than 1% of the land, right? And that's the Japanese participating with America with the spoils, with a piece of the game, going back to another alt rock kind of descendant of this, the Smashing Pumpkins, right? The world is a vampire sent to drain. What do you get for your pain? Betrayed desires and a piece of the game, So if you join the cool club, then you get to like not be who you want it to be, which is what? An actual living your life as a gay person and loving who you want. You get to not do that, or you have to like act and be white and say yes to the corporate office head, right? that you work for and smile, right? You have to not pursue the radical changes that you wanted to pursue when you were younger and, you know, at Stonewall or at Occupy or at Black Lives Matter, but now you got to go get a job and you got to make money in a corporate office doing the bidding of white supremacist capitalism. And so you get paid more, you get more money, but then you also betray who you are as a person and your values and beliefs, and then you also get a piece of the game. You get a cut. So Japan, similarly, not to say that there are people in Japan who disagree with this. Miyazaki is one of them, obviously, as a communist anti-war anime specialist. You know, that's a lot of what his movies are about. Natural, you know, again, actually, like a lot of Holly's as a family, that the more conservative Christian North American-y people didn't like that stuff because I think part of it is like those kind of shows, they deal a lot more with nature. They deal a lot more with nature. There's a lot of anti-war messages. There's a lot of anti-capitalist. You can't really put your finger on it, but it doesn't feel like Western demonizing monocultural imperial ways. It just feels too accepting of things that feel like what indigenous people do, which is satanic, right? I would argue actually a lot of the reason why the demon is represented by the goat, I'm not arguing, there's actual history of this, is because, you know, a lot of the peoples who were more like the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in Europe had natural, had goat deities, right, that were also important to harvest and to their cultural ways, right? And so the goat, the Satan being represented by the goat is millennia old fossilized Western demonization of other cultures to produce the Roman Empire. That's why Satan comes in the form of a goat, you know, as part of it. Now there's like, it's more complicated than that, but it's like if, you know, Hawaiians were demonized. And so the kalo became like some kind of, you know, this is not how it happened, but because for Hawaiians, the kalo was like central to our existence. And so Christians came and they said, this plant is Satan. You think it's just a little, you know, you think this innocuous little heart-shaped leaf, right? Or, you know, Kamapua'a, the pig. These Hawaiians, they love their pig, you know, and this heart-shaped leaf, it is actually the face of Satan. If you look closely, like looking into a pizza or listening to a metal album backwards, you can see the slit eyes when you turn it upside down, right? And then you can see, and if they turn this heart-shaped leaf into some kind of bad thing, and that's why we have to get rid of all the kalo and put monocropped corn and sugar, because now they didn't need to do that, and they didn't decide to do that, but that's just what you do as a Westerner, is you just figure out how to demonize a thing. And why do you do that? So you can take over the entire area, and then you can replace whatever the people were planting or whatever people were doing or their cultural and spiritual beliefs. And hula was satanic, right? So the process of dancing hula, to the Calvinists, hula was satanic, sexualized, seduction. It is the demon Eve taunting all of our good white Christian men coming to Hawaii, and this demonic practice of hula was banned in the missionary time of Hawaii, right? I probably can't find it. Calvinist missionaries arrived in Hawaiian Islands in 1820, right? And let me see if I can get that. Yeah. Calvinist missionaries arrived in Hawaiian Islands in 1820, and with the support of converted chiefs, denounced hula as heathen. So again, converting the chiefs. Religion is politics. Religion is economics. Never forget that. You know, as long as people are not coexisting, like I was saying, and you're in a world of this is the important thing. You can believe what you want to believe, but you cannot believe what you want to believe without understanding the history of how religion and colonialism, slavery, racism, genocide, plunder are connected. So if you want to go to church as a Hawaiian, you want to go to church, okay, but you got to know what the actual history of the church is, right? Otherwise, you are yourself continuing the process of colonization. So I say the highest rates of COVID deaths, some of the highest rates of worship of the U.S. military are the places that are the most religious in Hawaii. But they say, oh, I'm a good Hawaiian. Well, why are you still working for the U.S. military? Well, I mean, the recruiter comes to our church. What am I going to do? You know, and like also we're fighting on the side of good to convert all of the bad people in Iraq. They're Muslims. I'm a Christian. Well, I'm Hawaiian and I'm Christian. Well, part of the eradication of Hawaiian-ness was through religion. The same way the Catholic priests genocided, Christian priests genocided knowingly, and we now have thousands of bodies in Canada and also in the United States, but we have all the bodies all over Canada, 7,000, 10,000 plus children slaughtered, murdered in this school by Catholic priests with the complicity of the Canadian, which is the British, which is an Anglo-Saxon, which is a European colonial government. So Calvinist missionaries arrived in Hawaiian Islands in 1820 and with the support of converted chiefs denounced the hula as heathen. By extension, if the Hawaiians had not been converted to Christianity, some of these, right, there might be a little more hula. Now, this is complicated because in the time of I argue that a lot of the Hawaiian alii actually professed that they were converts, but internally they were still practicing Hawaiian spiritual practices, religions, and dances and prayers. But if you didn't profess externally Christianity, right, that how you might thought about Hawaii, then that was literally that because of the era of colonialism was a era of demonization of the indigenous for the process of taking the entire planet and converting it into colonies, slaves and resources and plunder for Europe, and then and also a small minority of them, the capitalist feudal lords, and then also the business owners and the plutocrats, etc., which is the way it's always been in the West. So demonization of the language and of the culture and of the hula, right? Hula, let's hula is it was banned, right? Then, yeah, because hula dancers were denounced as heathen. In the 1870s, hula found its savior. Hula is a language of the heart, and therefore the heartbeat of Hawaiian people. So it was Kalakaua who brought hula back. You know what this is like? This is kind of like, as people are starting to embrace their indigeneity, as people are starting to say, wait, maybe I'm not bad for being Chinese. Maybe I'm not bad for being black. Maybe African heritage has some value to it. Maybe like my Potawatomi or my Anishinaabe heritage is like valuable, and then, and that's dangerous. And that's why Hawaii was cooed partially, because if people, it's like, if you give the slave an inch, they'll take a mile. That's when you hear like, if you give, you don't give them any slack on that leash. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. That comes from that's from slavery and colonialism, right? And plantations. It's like, if you give, because if people start to figure out that maybe they deserve some rights and not to be treated and whipped and owned like little pets or cattle, you can't give them any inch, or they might get ideas. And if they start to spread ideas, because you are hurting and crushing so many people, if they get an idea, well, they might rebel, like, I don't know, like in Haiti. And so Hawaii was a place that was, well, maybe we are not fallen, maybe we deserve, maybe hula is not just evil, it was kind of like going, well, maybe they said that because we're shaking our hips in this way, our women are satanically possessing the minds of all of the men and making them rape the women. That's why the patriarchal Western world, the Christian world, that's why the story of Eve is the way that it is, right? It's because it is an anti-women, blaming women for everything, right? And then abusing their labor and abusing their bodies and using them to pump out more white babies so you can have more white men. Women are cooking and cleaning robots and whiteification, Caucasoid baby factories. That's what women are for the West. So, literally look at, that's why they're banning abortion, right? That's why they're trying to do these things. That's why they control your bodies. Indigenous and black bodies make sure all their bodies have the uteruses cut out and no more babies. And then the white bodies make sure that every fetus, every fertilized sperm and egg gamete comes out a beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby for white supremacist America. So, and the West generally. Also Europe. That's why all the blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies coming across the border from Ukraine, cradled, held, cheered, adopted, blah, 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 all this nice showering and praise. And all the black and brown babies, well, you can go, I don't know, die in Afghanistan or die in a hellhole that we made as European colonizers, right? And it was very mask off in that moment, but that's the way that Europe has always really been. It's never really been any different, It's just like, instead of fighting Christians and Protestants each other, right? Instead of Catholics prosecuting Protestants, everyone said, well, let's all gang up on Asia and Africa and the rest of the world, like more so. And let's do whatever the U.S. tells us to do. So, anyways, so this is the reality is that like, the modernization of Hulu title. Let me come back to the there's actually one more. And speaking of if you want to know more about Hawaiian queer, I know it's not LGBTQ plus month and it's not Pride Month right now anymore, but the term Mahu is familiar to anyone who grew up in Hawaii. Mahu is the third gender. It's not really a direct translation into English, but Mahu for Kumuhina, who is an indigenous Hawaiian Mahu person. Mahu means magic. No, it's more than just that, but it's a lot more than that. But that was in an interview with her recently. But anyways, challenging colonial structures of power and gender. A lot of the history of, as I said, right, gayness, queerness, women as equal, women generally, non-whiteness is all demonized. Non-Christianness, right, all demonized, right? And so similarly in Hawaii, Mahu were killed. Like queer indigenous people, like indigenous people were everywhere, but especially queer indigenous people. That's like multiplying the levels of demonicness, right? Indigenous people, like if the average indigenous person is like a imp or just the average demonic entity, right? Just like a low level foot soldier of Satan. Mahu were like the Vecnas in the sense, right? As a general of the army of Satan, right? Mahu were like the barons of hell, They were like the great emissaries of the great Satan that is, the evil goat god, right? The dark one, Lucifer. Because Mahu were great practitioners and carriers of indigenous culture, and also they were not straight, cis, white. They were not neither man nor woman. They were undecipherable. They were like ineffable. They were like undescribable, literally undescribable, right? Two-spirit people, queer indigenous people, undescribable by Western cultures in their own languages. Now, in indigenous languages, there was more understanding of what Mahu is, but they were like ineffable. And so for that reason, they were targeted and slaughtered first. They were burned. They were routinely burned at stake all the time. There's a whole video by Twin Rabbit called "A Queer Indigenous Thanksgiving," which if you want to learn even more about that, you watch that one. Anyways, so the term Mahu is familiar to anyone who grew up in Hawaii. When I was in elementary school. The important thing is that Mahu means to move between multiple spaces. It could mean third gender. It could mean non-binary, queer, neither heterosexual nor cisgender, homosexual, transgender, person who is transcendent, like Bisu of Indonesia, someone who feels between male and female. So again, there's not really an easy, Mahu is gay. Mahu is non-binary. It's not, I would argue the need to put everyone in a little box, even within Western queerness, and then sometimes the fighting that happens over that is residual unhealedness of people who have accepted themselves as gay, but then they're not quite ready to address some of the other problems they have with, for example, trans people. Or they're not quite ready to stop working for the U.S. military, right? There's a song, I think, we don't need gays in the military, we need militant gays. I think it's by Evan Greer, it's by a trans person. Because of rainbow imperialism and this thing, right? But even the need to put things into, this is what you are this. For Hawaiians, it was not like that, just like generally speaking. Like, it was not like your identity was a gay person. Your identity, if you felt, it's kind of like You don't look at someone and they go, oh, it's hot today and they're wearing a tank top. You go, you are a tank top person. You are that which wears the tank top, right? Which goes back to Plato. This is about the ideal perfect versions of reality. And then everything that doesn't match that, like religion, culture, dress, everything has to be excoriated to make the perfect thing. It's very Nazi. It's just very Western. It's very mono-cultural, right? If you don't fit gayness in this way, if you don't fit straightness in this way, well, I can't put you in the box, then you're bad. You see how that works? Like, for Hawaiians, it was like, if you felt like putting on a tank top, you felt like putting on a tank top. But you're not like, no, you are that which wears tank top. And you're fighting team which wears t-shirts or team which wears sweater. You put the tank top on because it was a hot day and you just felt like it. The next day it was cold and you put a sweater on. Why? Because it was a cold day and then you felt like it. Or for whatever reason, you just like the way that sweater looked. Doesn't matter. But you don't become, you're a sweater for, this is not exactly the way Hawaiians saw gender and sexuality. But it's like, if you were going to love a person that was, you had a penis and they had a penis and you decided to have sex or have romantic or whatever level of interactions you wanted, sexual or romantic, you in the same that you were a tank top person that day, you were a person who wanted to have sex with somebody who had a penis that day. And then another day you were like, oh, you shouldn't like go around and like just abuse people and lie to them, like cheating. And the concept of cheating is that whole, not to say that there aren't like commitments that people make to each other, but like the thing of like, you're bad because you are that which likes this type of, thing, and that's who you are. And if you take away from that, you're betraying it. Like if you're a woman and you call yourself, and then you are a lesbian, and then you but you say you're actually bi, and then you go have sex with a guy, like you're betraying our team, right? It's kind of like, that's a thing that happens in Western LGBT. I mean, within Western culture and Western sexuality, it's like you're not really on the side of women because you had sex with a man or something, right? Or you had sex with someone who had and a lot of that, the turf stuff, a lot of that stuff comes from, I would argue, residual non-mutual coexistence along gender and sexual lines, right? And not allowing people to be different and equal, and also be different, and then residual trauma within your own life. Looking at, there are a lot of terrible men, and so you look at men, you go, oh my God, all these men. And it's true, there's a lot of fucking terrible men, just everywhere, not just in white culture, everywhere. Speaking as somebody who identified as, or was socialized as one for a long time. But then that comes with you into the actions you want to take to make the system better a lot of the time. And then things fail because of, these things. Anyways, so for Mahu, for peoples in Hawaii, was not only Mahu was not just a second gender, a third gender. It was not just a third gender. It was not just queerness and gayness. It was also a act. Calling oneself Mahu is an act of decolonization, right? And not to say that you have to call yourself Mahu, but people who identified that way, was a process of decolonization. It was refusal for the stories and the lives to be erased by the same forces that stole Hawaii. So here it's speaking of Christianity, deeply Christian and educated in Western ways. His English teacher, Kaumi, this is a story of one of the Mahus in Hawaii in the 1800s. English teacher was Reverend Hiram Bingham, pastor of Kauai House Church. Soon his knowledge of healing attracted attention of members of the royal court, and it also helped. He was pleasing to the eye and had a good sense of humor. King Kamehameha III took notice of him and made Kaumi a aikane, or lover. They both were in their 20s. This angered a great deal of people, particularly the missionaries and other churchy Hawaiians. Kamehameha III was forced to confess the nature of the relationship to a church congregation, a practice among some Calvinists, where he was then sentenced to build a stone wall for the missionaries. Kaumi, who grew up in the household of Ka'ahumanu, was kicked out from the church because he refused to denounce who he was. After Kamehameha III completed the wall with his hands, he and Kaumi continued their relationship. So, by this time, Kaumi, you see how it gets complicated. Like Ka'ahumanu, there's a lot of stories about how she did not like the missionaries, and but it was they needed some Christianity in Hawaii, and just enough to tell the colonizers, just like Hawaii's flag. I love to bring this up. because people always ask, why is there a Union Jack in the Hawaiian flag? You know, why is there a Union Jack in the Hawaiian flag? You know, think about it, right? Imagine you're a Hawaiian watching indigenous people in North America be wiped off the face of the earth, right? You're reading about that. You're hearing stories about what's happening in Africa. Their whole country being plundered by Europe, being carved up like a piece of cake, and all the people, children and families broken apart, turned into slaves. And you're in Hawaii, and you're like, we're right after America, right after these Europeans are done despoiling Africa, genociding America, and turning it into a settler colony and plundering Asia. They're coming for us next. That's, you know, Hawaii is just, there's a continent and 3,000 miles of ocean between Europe and Hawaii. That's the difference between, I would argue that's one of the biggest differences between Hawaii and, I don't know, indigenous people on the east coast of the United States. Or even Africa. Africa is 500 miles. In some places, you can see Africa from Europe. Africa is one of the closest continents that's not white to Europe. People that are identified very deeply as different. And then Turtle Island, the New World, is 2,000 miles from Europe. Hawaii is 10,000 miles from Europe, and there's a continent in between. But Hawaiians knew, and Asia is 10,000 miles away from Europe, and Asia is bigger. Asia is huge. East Asia is massive. It's like 2/3 of the world's population. So you can't colonize China that easily because it's fucking 1.4 billion people. It's like 4 Europe's worth of people. Turtle Island had less people, and they had less total interconnection and they knew less about Europe, I would argue, is part of it too. But Hawaiians saw this process around the world, and you think, why would you put a Union Jack in your flag? You know, why would you put? People go, what? That's weird. Hawaiians were just a puppet of Britain. Hawaiians were just they were just a client capitalist state. All kind of bullshit about this thing now. The reason why there's a Union Jack in the Hawaiian flag is because Hawaiians, who were the most educated in the world in the 1800s, right? Just in case you forgot, because you're not paying attention to my Silver Spook streams and my Twitter. Hawaiians had the 98% literacy rate in the 1850s, when less than 10% of every European nation, including America, could read at all. And Hawaiians knew that if they did not, because they were the most educated and technologically advanced country in the world at the time, and they were moving towards socialism rapidly, and they knew, as brown, non-white peoples who did not practice a Christian religion, and they had watched how Christianization under missionary missions was the beginning and justification for one of the justifications for the process of colonization. Hawaiians had to put both a Union Jack in their flag and adopt some Christian practices. Kahumanu asked for Anglican missionaries. They got American, because Americans were not the most powerful empire at that time. Today they are. They're dying now, but in the 1800s, it was Britain that was number one. Kahumanu asked specifically for Anglican missionaries because she wanted to have access to to have the closest proximity to Britishness, British Christian, specifically Anglican churches, specifically the Church of England, right? So she wanted that one specifically so that she could profess that, so that she would have the least probability of being fully destroyed and colonized. That's part of this reality that was playing out in the 1800s. Because America was becoming its own empire by the end, and that's 1893. That's part of it. But the Hawaiian flag has a Union Jack in it, and they were Christian missionaries in Hawaii. Decisions were made to do that to prevent complete obliteration, like what happened to all of Turtle Island and huge amounts of Africa, Asia, right? So the fact that Hawaii survived as an independent, neutral country. Hawaii was the third neutral country accepted as an equal among nations in the world. You just imagine, were there any African countries that were accepted as equal to Britain? Were there in 1820, in 1850? Were there any Asian nations that were accepted as fully equal to Europe? Nobody still don't accept anyone in Asia as equal ever. They never will. But Hawaii was considered equal and neutral in the family of nations, number 3 after Switzerland, and it was Liechtenstein. It was one other country, and then it was Hawaii. Hawaii invented the concept of international neutrality. This is admitted by even Swiss diplomats and university professors who were like some of the best because they're dealing with all these assholes around them. Not that they don't have their own asshole tendencies, but so anyway, so getting off of that point, so Kami was somebody who was, but even still, there were, you could argue, well, you should never have sentenced your own Mahu queer indigenous person like Kami. You should never have persecuted them at all. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that maybe they shouldn't. Maybe Hawaiians should have just fully embraced indigeneity. And then, what people don't tell you is that if Hawaiians did not have any Christian practices, they would have been exterminated. You see? And then there's no Silver Spook or any Hawaiian to argue anything, because it would have been wiped out like so many indigenous tribes. This is the thing they don't tell you. There's a lot of indigenous tribes around the world, thousands actually, that are completely gone. They're just gone. There's nothing left of them. There's zero left of them. There are Cherokee, there are Anishinaabe. There are some tribes on Taiwan, but the Japanese annihilated like half of the tribes. There is no descendant at all. You know, when every time a language goes extinct, which they're going extinct all the time, that's another indigenous culture wiped off the map, like thousands. So there's a version of the world where there are zero Hawaiians. There's zero Hawaiians. If Hawaiians had chosen, this is people don't want to talk about it. If Hawaiians had chosen to take up arms and go shoot at American naval fucking ships in the overthrow, which was terrible and not just, there's like in Warriors of the Rainbow, Hawaii could have joined dozens of indigenous people that were exterminated in one fell swoop by chemical warfare by the Japanese. Not even the Americans or the British. It was the Japanese that exterminated like half of the indigenous tribes on Taiwan. And then they killed lots of Chinese too, tens of millions of people. And then they killed 1/4 of the entire population of Okinawa in one single battle, using the women and children as human shields. So if you choose, again, you see, unlike in the global north and the west, where you can just like stand on your high horse and preach, you have the perfect solution to the world with your anarchism, your communism. I'm not going to say those are bad ideas, but you can just say, well, if you don't do your revolution perfectly and make your change exactly right, if you aren't civil and you don't dialogue with Nazis and talk to them like the liberals want you to do and never shoot anyone and never do, to say like, that you got to go shoot everyone. But like, if you don't do it the way that we liberals, we anarchists, we Marxist-Leninists, we whoever, we first worlders say, you are doing your positive change in the world wrong. When you're but you can say that from your air-conditioned house with your food and your healthcare and your 450 trillion stolen dollars, and you have the luxury to fuck up, right? And just LARP inside of indigenous people's struggles, which is mostly what the global north does because they don't have any struggles. Not really. They're labor aristocracies. But in the global south, you don't have the option of the ideal way to make change. You're a demon. You're already Satan. You're just trying to slightly less satanize yourself in their eyes and try to basically just survive. This is why the revolutions happen in the global south, because they need it more to an extent. I mean, that's not it. You have to need it more, and then you got to do the work too. But they needed it more, because if Vietnam didn't fight back, there would be no Vietnamese people. They'd go back to being a colony. There has never been a white American in a colony, right? Starving to death by the millions, not since the Europeans were starving each other to death all the time. And that's not by other people. They're doing that to themselves because they're terrible at agriculture and they have horrible structures inside. But there has not been a generation of people of Americans, Canadians, and British who have been starved to death and exterminated based on their arbitrary skin characteristics, religious practices, and their nationality and whether they have the right kind of democracy. But if you are in the global south, my point is, you don't get to choose how you make those changes. How to and coming back to this, I'm off of my topic. How to undo your own demonization. You don't get to choose that kind of stuff. So anyways, back to the main point. I didn't talk about Sabrina and Wanda at all. It's almost 12:30. I gotta go. Yeah. So anyways, I should probably like redo this entire video, but I missed a lot of my points. But I just want to say on witches. So the history of witchcraft and Wanda and Sabrina. How does that tie in? You know, like I talked about WandaVision like in one of the Wanda from Multiverse of Madness. That's the one show we watched this week. Well, not one show. That's one of the shows that we watched. Before I got to that, but you know, a Wanda's character in Multiverse of Madness, the Scarlet Witch, is, you know, it's not like, you know, Multiverse. It's not a bad movie. You know, it's like it's a Marvel movie. You know, I'll say it. It's a Marvel movie, and it's like as entertaining as other Marvel movies. My favorite thing about Multiverse of Madness is that it was directed by Sam Raimi, and it's got all these Evil Dead send-ups and shit, and that was my favorite part. It's got a lot of like Sam Raimi. You have like a Terminator reference. He's a horror. He directed Evil Dead. You know, speaking of demons, he was the first. Like, he took The Exorcist and made The Exorcist, which is kind of a scary movie about demonic possession and a Catholic priest trying to exorcise the demons. Right. Speaking of demons, and he made that into demonic possession. First Evil Dead was a horror movie, but then he made demonic possession action comedy movies, like Ash versus Evil Dead. Right. Ash versus Evil Dead. You know, it's they were you know, played by Bruce Campbell, who shows up in WandaVision. The demons possess people and make them do things like Doom is also demonic possession. Demons possess the, you know, Space Marine Corps soldiers and colonels and lieutenants and sergeants, and then make their eyes turn white, and then they do the bidding of Satan, right? Speaking of like D&D, right, and Satanize and the Satanic Panic about, whoa, the Dark One is infecting the minds of a young generation and making them smoke pot and want communism and be gay and have long hair, right? Just think about all the things that are evidence of Satan, evidence of satanic influence, right? Evidence of, by the good Christians scared to shit about these things, right? It's like being gay, being non-white, being hanging out and having fun, listening to rock music, right? Doing a communisms, supporting indigenous people. Oh my God, they're going with those pagan, heathen Indians. So that's demonic. So demonic possession again is like That's why I'm making this album, right? I'm not done with it, but I'm still working on this album. But you can listen to. I just made another song yesterday that's actually kind of about this. But I have this song called "You're Going to Hell." It's still, you'll be fine. A lot of this is about this. Hell is the, you know, for the Western Christian world, hell is the place where there's no monocrop lawns. Everyone has a white picket fence. There's no Ponzi capitalist loans and neoliberalism. There's no landlords. Demons make you take a bath. People have hygiene practices. People wear masks and do basic science to stop pandemic. People don't smell like shit. People can be gay. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's hell. There's dark people. There's brown people. There's black people. You can't just bomb and genocide and spread Western lies. Oh my God, there's no settler colonialism in hell. Holy shit, it's terrible. Because why? Why is it terrible? Because there's like hot spices and flavor in my food. There's chilies inside of my white bread. Oh my God, it's Armageddon, right? There's infernal dark ritualisms like indigenous land back communism. That's, oh my God, indigenous people existing and like stopping the world from being destroyed by ecological practices and communism that we were doing, right? How terrible, how infernal, howling capitalism is gone in hell. Oh my God, destroying your freedom to say the N-word. Oh no, how terrible. You can't be racist and say the N-word anymore. Justify black murder with badges on you. You can't justify black murder with a badge on your shirt in hell, unlike in America, which is the good place. Racist police don't exist in hell. All the pigs are roasted and eaten by the hungry imps. Oh no, there's Russians coming from the east and they're crushing all of our innocent blonde and blue-eyed Nazis. Oh no. But all the javelins and missiles, you can't save you from doom because for imperialists, our graveyard has plenty of room. Oh no, there's no imperialism in hell. We can't just fire javelin missiles and make money selling weapons for a handful of Lockheed executives. Oh, that's hell. That's terrible. Asians are here, exist. That's hell. Asian dragons choke your colonial veins. No plundering Africa to make it rain. Oh no, we can't plunder Africa anymore like we've been doing for the last 500 years. That's hell. Breathing fire on coups. No more coups. We can't coup your country if you don't do austerity and crush your people and privatize everything and make them all subservient to Western interests. Oh no, there's no wars. Hell is when there's no wars. You want peace on earth? Peace on earth is hell. Debt traps. There's no debt traps. Oh man, we can't just like give IMF and WT loans. That's hell. Hell, because that's what happens when there's a multipolar Silk Road, and that's why China is in the Pacific and Americas. We have to get them out because China's going to bring hell to the Pacific, which is mutual win-win cooperation, development, and material change, right? Like in Africa and in Latin America, going to hell, is about where you have hot chips and lie. Women only want to twerk, eat hot chip, eat McDonald's and lie. I mean, you can do basic, normal human stuff in hell and not be called some kind of fallen succubus. You're going to hell. Your soul. So, anyways, smog belching oil companies. Think about it though, right? Did the black, brown, and indigenous people and the queer people and all the people that are called demons in the world, right? Did we start the smog belching oil companies, the stock markets? No, that was all Western capitalists. Did we make the wars and make the nuclear warfare? No, that was all y'all. The Western world doesn't deserve to survive any longer. Hellfire ablaze, the white world is dark and black. Yellow, so all they're coming to get me. All the black and the brown and the yellow people, they're all coming to come and take me to hell. No, and that's where America is right now. That's why the Supreme Court is doing what it's doing. That's why everyone's going behind Tucker Carlson. That's why everyone's standing behind their blonde-eyed, white NATO head and going, yes, all of Ukrainian will die for the preservation of the great Nazi, white, Aryan, the great European project, right? The Western world is going full mask off monoculture right now because it knows that's fascism, which is just like going to OG crusades, Salem witch hunt, ultra whiteness, ultra Christian is the final. It's really the final. Is like they say capitalism decays into fascism. True. Also, Western barbarism decays into fascism when it doesn't know what else to do. It gives all of its average white men a gun and a bunch of frothing at the mouth, like all the high school kids, right? And it says, okay, guys, we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. Okay, white men, everybody go on your Reddit and your 4chan and fucking spread these memes, and everybody sign up for the Lord's army and crush the Chinese skulls, crush the Russian skulls, crush the commies. Because we're all gonna die unless you cleanse this world of the demons. This is just the U.S. and Europe are going, and Canada and New Zealand are going where they've always gone. When the going gets tough, the West goes Nazi. They go puritanical. When the going gets tough, the West goes full frothing, unbridled, racist, Christian, puritanical, anti-women, misogynistic fascism. Every time. Same thing for the Greeks. Hellfire. That's why they went. That's the justification for going all the way into all the way into India. Was we have to cleanse the world of the dark Xerxes and the black Afro-Asiatic hordes. That's where they always go. Hellfire is ablaze, the white world darkens black. No Captain Americas can save you though, because you have to treat demons as equals, or humans. You have to treat other non-white Christian, non-straight humans as equals, because the world will not tolerate that. It's like there's not that there has to be a war. There shouldn't be a war. We don't really need a war, but people getting genocide committed against them, whether that's in Eastern Europe or like right now. You know what I hate? The thing I don't like about Stranger Things is the fucking entire the entire Russia scene is filmed in a Nazi death camp, and there's a hotel, Stranger Things hotel, and they're saying that's what Russia did, but Russia killed a lot of the Nazis. They did most of the fighting of that, and they're saying Russia is where Europe, Western fascist Europe and fascist backing Europe, Russia is being filmed in a literal Western Euro fascist prison that the Russians fought to liberate. That's one of the worst things about that, and also the anti-Russia stuff. I talked about that before, but it's even more fucked up that you think about it, right? That's a place that tens of millions of the Soviet people, Russian people died fighting to stop Nazis. Not the West. They were funding the fascists like they're funding them now, right now in Taiwan and in Ukraine and all over the world, right? And trying to keep a lid on it. The thing is, the West is having trouble keeping. As they get more desperate, they're going to take the lid off and they're going to go, okay, everyone in Britain, everyone in America, everyone in Canada, go full white supremacist fash, because we don't have any more options. Just like that was Europe at the end of capitalism last time. Let's go full fash, everybody. Let's demonize communists, and let's give all these starving poor people lots of money and guns and tomahawk and fucking javelins and Stinger missiles, and let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens. Let's make money from it. You go in, so anyways, but you can't. That's not an option anymore. So yeah, the Dark Hordes of the East, the Legions of the South. And the thing is, hell is when Earth is like ecologically sustainable. There's no capitalism and there's no more war. That's hell for the West, and that's that's what I mean by the demonization of actually good stuff in Western Christian good versus evil ideology, and that includes. And I lost my train of thought with the WandaVision, but so but Wanda's character. I mean, the witches in Sabrina. Sabrina is a surprisingly based show, as I said. I think I mentioned that last week. To chilling adventures anyway. Because it has demons, it has witches, right? Witches are created by demons. Witches are the people that are human, white people. But they're the least human of them, right? The women under a patriarchal Western world. So witches are when indigenous and black and brown people who are Satan, right? We are irrevocably heathen, right? As both the Calvinists in Hawaii and the Puritans and Christians who arrived on the shores of Plymouth Rock said, right? And so the women are in league. By extension, you could say that the white women in league with black and brown and indigenous people are witches in league with demons. That's another way to think about it, right? The women who want to end a patriarchy in league with demons, black and brown people who want to end racism and colonialism, right? And a lot of the signing of the Dark Pact, because that's how it should be like all women of all skin tones, right? Should not be treated as subhumans, obviously. And also all people of different skin color and nose shape should not be treated as subhumans. But, so that's a lot of the show is not, the show is not about that, but I'm reading that in, right? But Sabrina deals with racism, right? It deals with ableism. It deals with not that there's a character that's non-binary, not accepting of the non-binary character in a cis white heteronormative school, right? And the principal is a asshole dickhead white man, He's cis white man. He's like the dad of the high school basketball team in Stranger Things, And there's also characters that are like that. It's the jockey dudes who are like a dick, I have to say you have to be a jock to be a dick. You could be a nerd 4chan using dick, You could be a Reddit using piece of shit. But the point is that that's actually dealt with in Sabrina. How the actual struggles she has, Sabrina has her witch's coven, and then she also has her human fellow because she's half witch and half human. She has her another coven of people that, if you think about in the Vivitch, I don't have time to do all this. I gotta get out of here. But I'm gonna come back and do I'll do an entire thing. I'll use Sabrina as the cover or something. But this all ties together because of demons. Satan is in this show. Satan is the Dark Lord is there. The Dark One is there trying to cut. He gives powers to demons. He gives powers to the witches. They all have a deal, and they draw the power from. They have deals with him, and they worship and they look up to the Dark Lord. Some of them are not too happy with him, including Sabrina. But it comes from this history of persecution of non-men and women specifically in this case, and of course also in the case of Wanda. Now the difference between, I would say, Sabrina and Wanda or Multiverse of Madness is that it doesn't. You can tell that it's a Marvel. It's a richer, whiter man's script writing and production team on not to say there's something wrong with Wanda herself, but the people that make the show. I think Sam Raimi has done more base stuff historically, but he's making a giant blockbuster Marvel movies. So is that it doesn't deal with that. Yes, witches have the history. Why is there witchcraft? Right? Is because a patriarchal world targeted and blamed women for crop failures, blamed women for things not working out in their colony. Blame women for the weather. 90% of, and maybe 100% of a lot of the first settler colonies from Europe perished, right? Roanoke, there's a long list of these, right? And so the people would turn and target the women. That's what the Vavitch, right? Is kind of about that. It's just like looking at in a surreal historical film. What happened based on like the actual dialogue. The dialogue is actually from people speaking to each other and dealing with each other inside of a 1600s European settler colony inside of the U.S. And so they turn on each other, and then they turn, especially when things go wrong, they turn on the women and they blame them and they attack them and they say, "You're a witch. You bewitched me. And that's why you made me do this. You made me do that. You caused our cause to fail. You're dark pact with the devil. Cleanse yourself, admit your fault, admit your thing. And if you just stop this deal with Satan, maybe our corn would not perish, and then we could not starve." Right? And so in this desperation, they turn to the women. And then is it any surprise there's a bunch of women out in the middle of the woods, outside of the places that have demonized them, trying to just surviving themselves as they're cast out. And the main character in the Vavitch is somebody who is blamed for everything and is attacked and targeted and given all of the work to do as the oldest woman in a conservative Christian North American family. And she, which is very common, and then she is given all of the responsibility, none of the credit, all of the blame, and none of the nice things. And then Satan, who is a dark man in a scary coat, and he says, "Would you like to taste the delicious things? Would you like the taste of butter in a pretty dress?" Right? And it's also based on the things that a young girl would say she wanted, because they didn't have access to some of these simple things, right? Working all day long and then not having access. And Satan says, you've been toiling 3 times as hard as everyone else in this family, including the father of the house and the other boys in your family. And the mom is using you as the emotional support and also blaming you for shit and making you do all the work that maybe she should have been doing. And you, as the oldest woman, would you like Satan comes, right? Right? It's about demonizing actually good things, like just, women. Would you like to have the delicious things? Would you like nice things? And she's like, well, yeah, that doesn't sound too bad, right? And so you become a witch by asking for credit for your disproportionate work that you do as a woman in the West. That's what witches are. Witches are when Western patriarchal world has its own internal serfs and slave-like overburdened in a Marxist-Leninist sense, laborers whose value is being extracted by father, mother, and other siblings, right? Which is what happens when that oldest daughter person asks for their basic human rights and equality. Then they become a witch, and then they have to disappear with all of the black and brown and indigenous people in the woods and land back the motherfucker. Anyways, I gotta go because I gotta do a stream at 2. But anyway, I sorry I didn't get as much sleep because I've been working on this whole song all last night. But it will be coming soon. I'm trying to make an album. It's gonna be like You're Going to Hell album or something. By the way, my kids helped me do this. Our kids helped us do this album cover. I'm still working. I just finished another song. I'm really excited to share this song, but I don't. Wait, what the fuck? What? It's not on the Neofeud soundtrack. Okay, I think I fucked this up. That's not the Neofeud soundtrack. It's on the wrong album. I don't know how to do Bandcamp. I'm bad at Bandcamp. Anyways, I made another song. It's gonna be really cool. I showed Holly it yesterday. It's a song that's specifically about women too. It's a song that's it's about lots of things, but also it's like centers around. I can't even find my fucking song. It centers around mythological female characters like Pele and Hine Nui Te Po in Pacific Island culture, and but also all around the world, and Sky Woman, and it deals with not being a chud, treating women right, and also treating the earth that is your mother, which is also a woman, right, in order to survive. I mean, like literally. So that song's coming soon. But anyway, I got to get out of here. So, I'm going to try to get more sleep next time. And then I'm going to do another thing about this topic and try to find all of my videos sooner. But I just want to say, I'm looking for a Warlock, BC Rich Warlock. So if anybody has one, feel free to email it to me. I'm joking. You can't email a BC Rich Warlock. This is Eddie's guitar. So I'm looking for a BC Rich. I actually have one. It's on another island in Hawaii, but I don't want to. It's going to be a humbug to send it, and it's probably all. I have to replace. It's going to cost as much for the pickups and the machinery and time to replace all the parts than it is to just get like an old used one probably. So I'm not gonna, and I don't need it. I kind of wanted it as a prop because I'm playing all this music on streams a lot nowadays. If you want to see me play some music, you can tune in later on, like it's after 6 in the evening, and I'm gonna be on Twitch doing some of that. But anyways, so just remember, Stranger Things season 4. I haven't finished it. Don't spoil it for me, okay? Demons in the West are all the actually cool, good people and good stuff and good cultures and good ideology. Being called bad by the actually terrible, shitty people. Stranger Things season 4 is pretty good. Hellfire, Witches, go watch. You don't have to. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is better than Multiverse of Madness. I'm just gonna say that. Although feel bad for Wanda. Sabrina is more based than Marvel movies with witches. Sabrina as a witch is better. It's not she's like, it's just a better show, and it's more fully fleshed out story and less reactionary than the way that Marvel deals with the witch Wanda. Warlocks, guitars, the witches. Dudes can also be witches, and also the 2,000 year. Well, they can be warlocks, and the 2,000 year process of demonizing history. And yeah, so just remember, I'm not saying that you can't be Christian, but you have to understand like what the history of it, and factor that into your own understanding of the world in your dialectical or your indigenous, scientific thinking about, and scientific in the not in the Western science, in the indigenous scientific meaning of the word. But anyways, Neofeud is a game that you can't find on Steam. It is on itch. It is on sale. So if you want to get video games that are cyberpunk adventure games that are anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist games, do check out Neofeud on Steam, and you can grab it for $4.50. Disco Elysium is also a game that's like Neofeud but more cyberpunk. I'm sorry, and it's like Neofeud is like Disco Elysium, but Neofeud is more cyberpunk. That's what I meant to say. Also, don't forget you can check out Neofeud on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Also, you can get it on sale there, and you can also get Neofeud without the DRM and give us the maximum revenue. Finally, also, I got a few more stuff to say, like I always do. Don't forget you can also check out the Silver Spook games like Decolonators, about kicking. Speaking of demonized peoples, you can play a woman and a non-white person and a communist, the most demonic thing possible. A Vietnamese Asian woman communist. Can you think of anything more demonic than that in the West, in the Western mind? Decolonators is where you kick capitalist colonized butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory. Also, you can get woman. Speaking of all these things we're talking about, this is probably the most on topic to this. But again, Woman is written by Holly, who is my partner, also is a woman raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and is not a historical retelling, but it is a story of the Mother of God from the perspective of Mary, kind of critiquing a lot of all of these things at the same time. So do check this out. It's only 2,000 words. You can get it for free, or you can name your own price. And also, you can help us out here. And don't forget, I got lost in the very beginning. But usually my streams are much more. Well, I shouldn't say that. I always play tab games with my tabs. But if you appreciate the Silver Spook work, education, sharing the both the Ike, or that's Hawaiian for knowledge, and the humor, consider becoming a Patreon patron and supporting us at Silver Spook Games and Silver Spook Hui Cooperative, at the demonic Silver Spook Cooperative, where we're all indigenous, communist. We are non-white, communist, at least, I'm not a Christian, satanic entities, also queer, because I'm not, I don't identify as a straight cis white guy. So if you want to support all of us here, you can also support Silver Spook Games on Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud and get access to the Discord, get access to behind the scenes content of Neofeud 2 and other things that we're working on, including at the Silver Spook Hui. We're fixing up the entire roof, which that's been a big project for me. So I talk a little bit more about that in one of the updates. It does cost a lot of money though. Everything costs money: electricity, internet, houses, cars, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to, how much is the education worth to you? Is it like, or an entertainment? Is it $1, $5, $3, $10 a month? Whatever you can afford, please consider supporting us, because we do need it to keep doing the work that we do here. Anyways, so also you can check out Silver Spook Games at octodon.social on Mastodon, and also at Silver Spook Games at mastodon.social for the games related stuff on Mastodon, which is decentralized, a non-capitalist, federated platform. You can also check out, while we have access to the Death Star satellites, at Silver Spook Guy, of course, is my Twitter. And you can follow at Silver Spook Guy, and you can follow for Silver Spook Games for the games stuff. And like when the games go on sale and when the games come out. You can also follow Terminus C, which is another game that I'm still working on. That is a low poly cyberpunk game like Deus Ex and System Shock. Coming soon to a PC or a PS4 or all kinds of other systems. I'm not sure which ones they all are, but I'm the content director and writer on this game. So if you like those kind of 3D cyberpunk RPG games, consider checking this out, and you can join the Discord as well. You can also follow, speaking of other Hawaii related stuff, you can follow, actually you should follow also Kama what's his name? Can never remember that guy's entire name, but Kama na Mai Kalani Beaver. Dr. Beamer is a very important educator, but also Positive Synergy, or Kama _1983, is another native Hawaiian educator and musician trying to support struggles like the desecration of our sacred lands here in Hawaii, as well as the shutting down of Red Hill, where the U.S. military is poisoning all of our water supply, protecting Mauna Kea, and doing land back and decolonizational efforts. So you can also get the album Perfecting Perfection on Bandcamp as well, for with the very important messages about those topics, land back, decolonization, etc., for $5, and with great music and great messages to spread to all your friends and your relatives and your comrades around the world. Okay, so and Holly, of course, as I said, you can follow at the Tech Fairy, at Mod NVA and partner. Holly is, of course, a voice actor partner in games, in children's, in making in marriages, in producing these streams, of course, and modding. And of course, Holly produces also Zion Attack, Kate Nix, or the Summoning Show, was formerly known as the Lullaby Lounge, and it is a show for Mischief, Misfits, and Monsters, and ACAB, and that is the show that happens every Tuesday at 8 Eastern Time. Really cool show. I highly recommend you checking that out. I'm in there like for some amount of time for many of them nowadays. Magic Storytime is a live streaming. Also, Magic Show live streamed on Twitch that Holly also mods for. Holly also is writer of books like the book Woman that I showed earlier, and is a parent to the two. Keiki, and primary caregiver, and also main manager of all things Clean My Room recently. People say like clean your room, and I'm like, let me get my underappreciated surf to do it. No, but yeah, Holly did help me with that. So Holly is doing a lot of important work here all the time. So that's what we have to support all of our witches. I embrace my demonness. I embrace my demonness, and I encourage everyone, if you embrace your witchness and embrace your warlockness, because these motherfuckers, man. Anyways, yes. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much, and thanks Big Teal for hanging out there. And don't forget that we will be back. I'm actually going to be back talking to another Hawaiian who is not in Hawaii, but I'm going to be back at 2 o'clock on Twitch. So it's going to be earlier, in about 8 Eastern or 5 Pacific time. I'm going to be back on Twitch and talking to Lima Hana, who is a Hawaiian person. Was on the Luna, was interviewed by Luna recently, and talking about Hawaii struggles and how we can do things to help make the positive change in illegally occupied Hawaii. Illegally U.S. occupied Hawaii. Anyways, thank you so much. Thanks, patrons. Thanks very much. Very good. Thanks for your continued support. It really does help make these shows possible. Yeah. Keep them very safe, polished. Be excellent to each other, and play your guitar solo good and defeat the actual demons of the world that are white supremacist, capitalist, queerphobic hegemony. Anyways, thank you very much.